Hi there, it's me, Jordan Van Haslo. Welcome to Jordan Van Haslo and Friends live on Hot 702.5 FM Las Vegas. Let's get on with the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Showtime with Jordan Van Haslo and Friends right here on Hot 702.5 FM Las Vegas. Thank you all for joining us. It's always a pleasure to spend an hour each week with you and my new and old friends. And I'm so excited to introduce the gentleman who's joining us today. He is a Bronx-born, New York-bred director, theater, and film. For many years, he was the artistic director of Teatro, LATEA, where he produced and directed many, many theatrical pieces on the Lower East Side, both contemporary and Shakespearean. And his directorial debut, St. Nicholas, is now available for streaming on Tubi. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Jose Esquea. Hi, Jose. It's such a pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you. So just one thing before my folks kill me. I was actually born in Harlem. So but I am raised in the Bronx.
You're raised in the Bronx. I feel like that's a common.
No, I was gonna say, but if you know New York City, you know you gotta keep all your boroughs happy.
I totally. Well, do you resonate as a Harlemite, or do you resonate?
I've come of age here in the Bronx.
Yeah.
But, you know, my Harlem folks don't let me forget where I was born. You know.
You've been in the Bronx ever since. Like, there was never a thought to move back to Harlem.
Well, you know, when you're a kid, you follow your family. So,
totally. But I mean, like now as an adult, like, are you like,
Harlem, Harlem is a little, cost prohibitive, shall we say?
Yeah, it's changed a whole lot. Although, can I tell you, the Bronx has changed a whole lot. So as many of the folks in the audience know, I'm the board president of the Entertainment and Arts Alliance. Mm-hmm. And one of the organizations that we patronize is this amazing arts camp up in Litchfield County, Connecticut, called Bucks Rock. We were coming down, we send guest artists up there during the summer to give master classes, etc. And we were in the car coming back, and I live on the east side, so we take the cross Bronx to go over the 3rd Avenue Bridge. And you get off the expressway and have to kind of drive through the South Bronx a little bit. And I was so shocked. There were like these coffee shops and like restaurants with shiny neon signs and a bunch of white people. And I was like, oh my God. Because I remember many, many years ago when the market was really getting crazy in New York and Manhattan in particular, and that's when people really started moving out to Brooklyn in droves, and they were starting to really build up Long Island City. And I remember the real estate agents tried to rebrand the South Bronx as Sobro to try to get people to move. And when I was driving through the other day, I was like, oh my goodness, it took.
Well, it's the reality of development in urban centers, right? Real estate goes up and down, and people look for depressed areas, and then they build in those areas. The challenge always, obviously, is that the native folks to that area are usually who are working class and poor, particularly the folks that are the good human beings that sustain those neighborhoods when those neighborhoods are through tough times are unfortunately priced out. And then, they're kind of left to scramble. And so, there's a new sort of South Bronx rising, which is absolutely beautiful, has great amenities. There are wonderful restaurants. Many of
all these new high rises, these all glass high rises.
Yeah, they're all glass rises, high glass high rises. One of the things that's going to be coming to the area is going to be a professional soccer stadium.
Oh, wow.
Right, is going to be built in that area. So again, the challenge is these are all great things. But, when a studio starts at $3,000 in what is historically the poorest borough or district in the country, you kind of have to question who is going to be able to afford to live here? But that's a whole
Totally.
other,
That's a whole, we can
whole
talk in a
nother-
whole hour on
Yeah,
that
yeah,
as
exactly.
as well. But I want to talk about you. So I know you went to Skidmore and you got your bachelor's in business.
Yep.
So where did the arts and where did directing, where did theater, where did Shakespeare come in? Was that something that were the arts always a part of your childhood? Or did you have one of those like crisis of consciousness at your desk one day and say, I can't take it anymore, I'm going into the theater?
A little bit, yes, sort of a little bit of the two. So I was always a very art focused and expressive young person. Primarily, initially through visual arts. I used to draw and paint a lot. My family, as I mentioned before, moved around a lot. We moved in and out of New York a lot. We moved to the South a lot. We moved to the Caribbean a couple of times. So I was, so art used to be the one way when I was a new kid in the neighborhood that I could always have something that would keep me grounded, right? It was the one thing that could travel with me wherever I went, was my drawings and my ability to sort of understand or see perspective. By the time I got to high school, I was trying to decide what I was going to do, but I'm an Afro-Latino kid from a working class family, right? And if you get this amazing opportunity to go to this really great school because you've done all the right things, if you know working class Afro-Caribbean families, you don't turn around and go, by the way, I'm going to be an artist. You know, not what they want to hear. You know, they want to hear you're going to get a degree and you're going to get a degree in something that's going to get you a job. So I had a very difficult time trying to figure out how to negotiate the two. And at the time, my art teacher said to me, you know, your art is an innate gift. She said, as long as you practice, you will be able to always paint. You will be able to always draw. You just have to practice. She said, if I could go back and do it again, one of the things that happens to artists often is that they do not understand business. And so as they are creating their art and they're growing in their careers, they often make choices that leave them impoverished because they didn't have the business insight to know how to negotiate the business side of entertainment or art or anything like that. And so that's that's part of what I did. I still, when I entered the school, I continued a dual track with visual arts and business. Those were sort of my two main ways that I was kind of trying to figure out how I was going to solve the world. The theater came in because, unfortunately, I had a philosophical difference of opinion with my visual arts advisor. And
how so? Well, two questions before you answer that. So first of all, I'm just curious, what was your medium when you were
My medium was primarily, I would do a lot of pencil etchings, and then I would do either oils or watercolor. And I was beginning to get into sculpture, but I was always fascinated by trying to tell a story. So one of the teachers that I had that had a particular sort of way of assigning things, we also had some tension based on our perspectives and where we lived. I don't know that it is fair, you know, with perspective to say that it was a racial thing, but race, like many things when people are from different perspectives, did play a part in her either evaluation or interpretation of how I approach my work. And so when we had this difference of opinion, and also social economic scale. So when we had this difference of opinion, one of her comments was, you know, which was the thing that made me go, oh, okay. She said to me, you know, there are people that are paying a lot of money for you to be here. So you basically do as you're told. And you know, exactly, right? You see that look on your face? That was really like, you just said that, you know? And
that's so crazy. Isn't it funny how times have changed though? Because like if you were a student now and she said that, you'd immediately go to TikTok, she'd be fired, and you'd be selling your paintings for a lot of money.
Exactly. But at the time, right, you know, you're talking 30 years ago. So how do you engage as a young person, right? Because at that point I was 18 years old.
Yeah, how do you even like interpret that and like even, yeah, totally.
Well, you know, the interesting thing is like most of us that come from neighborhoods in New York and that come from families that have faced, even if our families didn't talk about it, right? We are who we are. So they've all faced it. And one of the things that my grandmother is my primary care has been, I mean, is to this day the rock of my life and my primary caretaker. And my grandmother has never, ever, 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 like most Caribbean Black women, suffered any fools.
Where is your family from?
Family is from the Dominican Republic.
Okay.
But my grandmother, who to this day speaks little to no English, she is that grandmother that like when I was a kid, I used to absolutely hate the fact that if she did groceries, and we were little, we were suffering, so a couple of times we were on food stamps and all the things that come with poverty in tough neighborhoods. And she would sit there, back in the day they used to have, this is, people don't know this now, but back then they used to be like the food stamp book that they used to give you, as opposed to like everything is on a
card or something. Yeah.
You walk into the store and people, unless you say something, nobody would know that you are on public assistance.
But right. Then, versus then it's like, you're like, okay.
Yeah, but like back then when you're a kid and you're going shopping with your family and your mom, now mind you, we're all in a poor neighborhood, like more than half the neighborhood is on public assistance, but you still feel embarrassed, right?
Yeah.
Because you're a kid and you don't want to be thought of that way. And my grandmother was the kind of person, she'd go through the groceries, and if she was owed a penny, she would make the cashier go take everything back and recalculate again, because she was not going to have a penny that could have gone to feed her family be stolen from her.
A penny saved is a penny earned.
Exactly. And so as a child, I used to be like, oh my God, like, please bury me. There's
like a line of people behind you.
Exactly. Like, oh my God, I'm never going to live this down, But as an adult, right, the first time that I was in the situation where another adult challenged my vision or my sense of self, I didn't cower, because I'd grown up with an example that no matter what a person's status is in life, color, wealth, or whatever, you cannot diminish me as a human being simply because you feel like it, right? So I was taught to be disrespectful. As an artist, because I had really decent training in high school, I understood, and to this day, I'm always very comfortable with getting notes about my work. But when you cross the line and you go from my work to attacking me personally, then I don't go for that. And
so how did you deal with that? So did you use that and like leave art, or did you say, like that chorus line song, I'm going to find a better class?
Well, what happened was that the argument was over how a series of work was being done. And at the time I was doing I was always a huge fan of Michelangelo's work. And I had done this sort of reinterpretation of a bunch of his paintings. And after her and I had that argument, and I kind of skated around doing theater stuff, but I went to my room and I sat down and I just kind of took out all my work and just laid it out in front of me. And I thought to myself, what am I trying to say, right, as an artist? And I realized what I was always trying to do is I was always trying to tell a story. And I was trying to create a sequence of images. So even though I was using sort of classical artistry, I was kind of making comic books, right?
Right, or like storyboard or something. Like you were, yeah.
So, but ultimately what I realized was that I enjoyed from that, whether it was doing it that way or when I was a child, kind of doing it with action figures, or when we would have the family get-togethers, I would just kind of make all my cousins do whatever I said. I realized I was like, oh, wait, you've always been directing. Like you. And so I was a freshman at the time and I could choose whatever I wanted to choose. And I said, you're in a place where you can make a choice. So I literally walked out of the art department.
You're like, there's a lot of people paying for me to be able to make a choice. So there.
Exactly. 100%. So I was like, well, you know what? That means that if people are paying, I can make whatever choice I want. I walked right out of the visual arts department and I walked into the theater department. Literally didn't
just
know.
Out of curiosity, before, because I want to get into the film, but I'm just curious now, because like when we get older and we look back on things, and we sort of almost like you said, like you're kind of looking at it as like, oh, we're just from two different places, so we really don't, like you're probably looking at it with less heat than you probably did when you were 18. When you look back on it, even though her delivery and her message was inappropriate and nasty, do you now, looking back, find any value in what the underlying critique was, or no, she was just a pinhead?
No.
Cool.
Because basically, really quickly, right? There was an assignment underway that we had to approach literally creating work, and the assignment was have music in the background, whatever. And literally, as I was doing the assignment, my little Walkman broke, right? But I was painting to a piece of music that I listened to my entire life. So just because I don't have it, just because you can't hear it, it doesn't mean that I can, right? Mm-hmm. If I know the music, if I literally have been hearing the piece of music since I'm like 13 and I'm 18, I don't really need to have my headphones. It's always there.
Do you remember what song that was?
Yes, it's actually it was a jazz piece that used to be used to introduce boxing on WABC. And part of it used to like go and it would just kind of, and there was always a New York skate that went along, and there were like these amazing silhouettes of boxers that used to be kind of playing in the background. So again, since I was 13, because I used to watch boxing with my grandfather, that was sort of, I would hear that piece of music and that was a cue, like, we get to hang out, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I had, when I was like going, really, you're tripping because my Walkman literally, and it wasn't like I said my Walkman broke and you didn't see it. Like you literally saw, for those people that might remember cassette tapes, like you saw the cassette was like all mangled and all that stuff. And then he told me that because I actually literally did not have the music playing, that I was trying to lie, that I couldn't possibly know the piece of music. Exactly.
Were you trying not to, were you saying like, I can't paint it because I need this music and it's my inspiration?
I just kept going. Like, I showed her, I said, listen, this just happened. I'm not going to stop. I know this music and I'm just going to keep going. And then when I handed so she didn't say anything in the class when I kept working. Then when I got my grade for the work, it was.
Oh, was that like part of the assignment? Like you guys had to listen to music while you were.
Right.
Got it.
Right. And so she saw the instrument fall apart. She saw me keep painting. And then she didn't say anything. And then when I got the results and I got my grade, she downgraded me to like a D. And when I asked why, she said, well, because you lied about listening to music. I was like, oh, wow. Like that's when I realized, oh, this is becoming something else. This isn't really about.
This isn't about expression. This is just about you having control and trying to take out whatever frustrations you have for not. Oh, well, good riddance. We all go, like, it's a part of the experience, right? Like,
and again, what it taught me was that even far from home, and for the first time facing adversity, as a kid, you don't realize it's institutional racism, but it is, right? It taught me that my little grandmother had prepared me to handle it, right?
Right, totally.
And that was empowering in and of itself. And like you said, right, it taught me to immediately listen to words and find where the power in the words were, right? Her words to control me were to say, well, there are people paying for you, so you have to do this, right? And my immediate turnaround was like, well, hey, there are people paying. I have choices.
So you're like, moving on.
Exactly.
I'm a storyteller, so let's explore storytelling. How old are you at this point? Is this like your sophomore year, junior year, freshman year?
It was literally all within a week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, when I pivot, I pivot. So it was literally within a week. I walked into the theater department. I didn't know a soul in the theater department. I literally walked around the building. I was like, can you tell me who I talked to about taking theater classes? The universe, God, whatever you consider your higher power, always places you where you need to be. And the office where I finally found a person to speak with, the professor that I ended up speaking with ended up being my advisor for 4 years. She was an amazing human being. Her name was Alma Becker. And everything that I learned about how to be a good theater professional and a good human being to other human beings in the art, she was the first anchor of. And, and I went in and told her the story like I told you, and she just went, okay, so what do you want to do here? And then I told her, well, I decided that I'm a storyteller. And she goes, well.
You're like, not listening to my Walkman.
Yeah. And so I told her, and then she goes, okay, well, if you want to learn to direct, this is what I want you to do. And she said to me, she said a really, really good director has to understand what the director is asking the actor to give and to do, and how difficult that is to do properly, right? It is a tremendous responsibility, physically, psychologically, mentally. Like so she was a student of Uta Hagen and HB Studio. So there was something that she valued about the artist's ability, the theatrical artist, particularly the actor's ability to live moment to moment, and for the director to understand how to guide the actor through that process. So she said, I will let you be in the theater department and learn directing and playwriting under one condition. You have to go through my acting conservatory for the 4 years you're here. And I said, no problem. Wow, okay. And so I went through the acting conservatory. The most intense experience I had as an artist. I learned that I did not want to be an actor. I took focus on directing, and then also on playwriting, and I still maintain my business degree. So that's what I did while I was there.
That's wonderful.
Really, until I graduated, most people didn't even know that I was a business major, because they would always see me in rehearsal studios, you know.
Yeah.
So that's how that phase kind of happened.
Yeah. So you graduate and you come back to the boogie down.
Yep. Well, actually, first came back to Rockland County. My family left New York when a year before I graduated, and unlike most, you know, again, I come from a family where people make decisions, they make them. So they left, but my grandmother didn't leave me an apartment. So I was like out of college in New York City and homeless. I mean, I had family, but you know.
No, but it's like, no, totally. They're like,
exactly, like, you know,
deuces, and like they just.
And again, it's sort of the same thing, right? I get out, I have this fancy degree from this fancy school. People are expecting I'm going to be a business consultant someplace. And, you know, I'm like, I think I want to pursue a career in the arts. And, you know, everybody starts to kind of look at me sideways. So I struggled for a year in New York City, couldn't find work. You know, it was in 90, interestingly enough, I think I've been around looking for work during most of the recessions that have happened in the last 30 years. And so in 93, if you remember, like there was a tech boom, real estate boom, and all those things, and they all kind of collapsed.
So was it Black Monday? Is that the time Black Monday, or was Black Monday a little earlier?
Yeah, it was. But the main difficulty was that my one sort of auntie that was giving me space to try to pursue my dreams, she lived in Rockland County, and in order to do anything, you had to come to the city. And I had very little money. So it was, you know, it was sort of rob Peter to pay Paul, you know, anything that I could sell, my books, my CDs, my clothes. I was just, whatever I could do so I could get to the city to try to get, you know, I would still audition at that time every now and then, because I was like, I don't want to be an actor, but if I get a commercial and it helps me pay bills, then great.
Totally. At this point, you're just trying to get in the door.
Anything.
By any means necessary, yeah.
Exactly.
Totally.
But that didn't work out. And eventually my grandmother got fed up and was like, you're coming to live in Florida. And I went to live in Florida for a year. I was living in Cape Coral, Florida in 1994. So I was maybe 22, 23. And at that time, the average age, the mean age in Cape Coral, Florida was 44. The two nicknames for the town were Cape Coma and Heaven's Radio. So needless to say, it was a predominantly much older, very white conservative town, and there was really no art scene, which was really the most important thing. You know, I mean, people were nice enough, but it was just a tiny. To be honest. The town was so small, they didn't really have sidewalks in most of the little suburban.
Oh, wow. So she brought you down there to do what? Get a job? Like what were you supposed to do down there?
Well, you know, again, like, so family dynamics, again, when you come from very close-knit families are very important, right? And my grandmother's a very proud woman. So the idea that I had this degree and I kind of hadn't gotten it together and that other people had to support me, she couldn't live with that, right? So she was like, come down here. And again, right, while I know how to stand to an institution, I'm not going to talk back to my grandma. You know?
She'll throw a penny at your head.
Exactly, right. And if you come from the background similar to like we come from, you know, a respect for your elders is a very important thing. So you have to learn how, where, and when to properly stand up as an adult to your elders. But at the time, I just didn't know. And so, you know,
Yeah.
grandma said, "You're coming down," and I went down.
So how long did you stay down there?
I stayed for a year.
Okay.
Then I started to save money, and I realized that I was incredibly unhappy. That I also, one of the things that I think that is also very important, because I have brothers and sisters, and this is a dynamic that happens often in working class or working poor families, when you're sort of the first one to make it, right? Where you feel that it is your responsibility to help everybody else,
Oh,
right?
like the entire weight of the world is completely on your shoulder.
Right. You know, you feel like,
Yeah.
hey, you know, I have this thing, right, that is supposed to help us all lift ourselves up, and I'm not using it. And so I have these siblings and I have all these things. And so you feel like the right thing for me to do is to help my family, which I won't, which is unfair to say that it isn't, because it is, right? That's why we are family, because we depend on each other and because we help each other out.
Yeah, but there's still like a matter of, you need, especially as a younger person who's still trying to find their way in the world, you need a certain sense of autonomy just to be able to start figuring it out.
Exactly. And so after a year of being down there and realizing, you know, like I got down there and I had the most coveted job in Cape Coral, Florida, which was a salesperson at Circuit City, the electronics store.
I
Paying,
used to love my CDs. I used to get all my CDs there because they were always like
was
$9.99.
on sale, right? So, and at the time, I've never forgotten, because the job was coveted in Cape Coral, Florida, because especially if you could make it to be a salesperson, because it paid a little bit above minimum wage at the time, which was like $6.25 an hour plus commission,
Uh-huh.
right? And it was one of the most difficult jobs to get in the town, because you had to test to be able to be a salesperson and get your little sales badge with your like stereo and TV. And I was like, well, you know, how did, and you know, people that are my friends and cousins that I met on there, they were like, man, it's a tough test. I was like, well, I just got a
You're
bachelor's degree.
like, I have a business degree from Skidmore that a
Right.
lot of people pay for, so I'm good.
So I remember going to apply for the job, and I was like, you know, but I'm still, I mean, you know, I'm a human being, so I'm kind of hesitant about this test. And I go, so what about the test? And the guy's like, well, the test is here, and you know, kind of testing on computers was just coming into vogue. Uh, and then I said, well, how long do I have to study? And they were like, no, you don't study, because it's an open book test. And I was like, what? He was like, it's an open book.
Oh,
And I was like, but I heard most people in town fail it. And the guy goes, yeah. So I was like, so I mean, I took the test, passed it, you know. And I remember my cousins were like, wow, you passed the test? I was like, it's open book. You have the answers right there. Anyway, so I did that for a little while. Learned a lot, actually. Interestingly enough, like anything else, pivoting and seeing what you get out of things is the most important thing, right? Um, I worked under 3 exceptional retail managers that I learned a lot from, about responsibility, about business in general, and also about how to treat human beings when you are trying to gain an advantage or complete a sale, right? All things that become extremely useful when you're an independent artist later on in life, and you're having to negotiate how to fund a project, or how to get somebody on your side to give you a resource that you don't have. And I learned that thanks to those guys, and responsibility. You know, I remember my sales manager, his immediate name was, my immediate manager, his name was Brian Ackerman. And he was this really great guy from Ohio. And I remember, no matter what happened, once he became a manager, he would always sweep the store at night. And, you know, and one time I looked at him and I was like, Brian, I can do that. Why do you do it? And he said, I've never forgotten this. He said to me in his very Midwestern accent, he said, but it needs doing. And I was like, yeah, but I'm here. He goes, yeah, but you're my sales guy to sell speakers. And so if I take you away from selling those speakers so that you can sweep the floor, you're not going to get the speaker sales that we need so that we can make our commission and do really well up to where they need to be. I, on the other hand, I'm standing here doing nothing. So I can pick up a broom, even though I'm the manager, and I can clean the floor, because when that person walks into the store and they see a clean floor, they feel like the level of service is going to go higher, right? And I was thoroughly impressed by that. It's like, wow, he was a manager. He didn't think, oh, well, you know, I'm the guy in charge. I shouldn't do this. He was like, no, it needs to be done. I'm the person available. I'm going to go do it. You know, in terms of team, there was another gentleman who his name I've forgotten, but I remember one of the things that I learned from him was he never touched money. And when we would have to close the store, if I'm 52, so if you're maybe from your 40s on down and you ever work retail, you know, when you close the store, you got to count the store out, right?
Right.
And so I remember one time I said, why don't you, he was like, no, I'll sit with you and I'll watch you do your count and I trust you. He said, but I never touch money. And I said, why? He said, because even with me being a regional manager, with me doing anything wrong, I know that to be around all this money can sometimes create a temptation that might be a little greater than it should be. And to keep my integrity, I make sure that the one thing that I know could tempt me to do wrong, I stay away from. You know, and again,
wow.
to me, that was a very valuable lesson, right? And
drinking women, though, is another story. But money is like...
but again, right? Whatever that thing is, right? If you value being the head of a company, if you value being the project manager or the project leader, like you said, you work with an Arts Alliance group, right? One of the things that's a unique management experience in the arts world is that we're very touchy-feely people, right? And we like to hug and we get very loose and we joke, and you don't know when something can be misinterpreted, right? 2 days ago, this gesture was particularly fine. And this one day you did it, and now all of a sudden it isn't, right? So there's a certain decorum and standard of behavior that you have to maintain in any industry that you're in to protect the work that you have poured your life into. So I learned that from him, you know, and then there was
That's wonderful.
His name was Rod Lovell, and he was a brilliant, brilliant salesperson. And one time I couldn't sell something, and I came up to him and I said to him, I don't know how to sell. I can't do this. And he said, yes, you can. He was like, everyone can sell something. You just have to love what it is that you're selling. Because he said to me, selling is not selling. It's overcoming an objection. So when someone walks in and they're upset with you, think of them like a 6-year-old, right? You wouldn't get angry with a 6-year-old if a 6-year-old doesn't want to eat dinner or doesn't want to take a bath, right? He goes, what would you do?
Well, you might.
You might, right?
If it's late.
Right. But he said, short of forcing, right? If you're an intelligent adult, what you would do is you would calm the person down. You would meet them where they are. So you would usually come wherever they are, higher or lower to that level, right? And then you would start to kind of peel the onion, right? And you would ask questions. Well, yeah, exactly.
Well, no, I remember like the sales. I used to work for in admissions for a school many, many years ago, and I remember going to the sales training, and I'll never forget the woman, because she had like come through the school and become like the national head of admissions or sales or whatever. But I always remember she kept saying, "Find the pain." Find the pain. And, you know, just keep asking questions to figure out like what is, you know, because the objection, it might be money, like I can't afford it, and that's the end of it. But what is really the hesitancy about? Understand it and then figure out how to help them overcome it. So I totally understand it.
And once they do, that's it, right? And the day that his lessons became incredibly apparent about the power of being able to communicate. So like I said, I was in Southwest Florida, early 90s. And one day we had a sale, massive sale. And everyone on the floor was busy. And I saw a young man walk in, a young white male walk in, and he needed help with something. He was looking at speakers. And I looked around and everybody was busy, and we were sort of literally the only two people that could kind of communicate. And as we kind of looked at each other, right, you know, because I'm a light-skinned fellow, right? He was trying to figure out like, what am I or whatever, but then his kind of eyes did like, oh, that is a black dude, right? And then I remember he raised his head and he had a swastika tattoo and SS tattoos running down his neck and white supremacy signs all over like his body. And so here we were in a very unique dilemma, right? Like, we are the only two people that can communicate. Right? I need a sale, he needs an item. And philosophically, as two human beings who would probably be in any other situation more likely to kill each other than work with one another. I remember thinking about all the things that Rob said, and then taking a moment to say to myself, right now, everything that you can preconceive about a human being, you have to take one moment and put it aside and just see what can happen. And it was, for the entire time that I was there, one of the most pleasant exchanges I ever had with a human being. Because we both literally had to take all the things that we knew our ego was, and we had to surrender them and put them to the side, and we had to resolve our dilemma. And that taught me, that has never left me, you know? So go ahead.
Did you make a sale?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, he walked out. He went in to buy 2 speakers on sale. I remember there were 2 Technique speakers he walked in to buy. He walked out purchasing a complete stereo surround sound system with 5 years of warranty. Like, I made like $350 out of one sale. That initially, when he came in for the sales item, I was going to make 75 cents from.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. And
you should have just had a site, like, preloaded it with like an NWA CD. It's like a nice surprise for me.
But you know, and again, right, like preconception of things, right? A month later, this very fine older, you know, Northeastern couple came in, and they wanted to hear this very high-end set of speakers, and I said, you know, you have sort of stuff to give people to listen and what their music taste is. And I said, oh, would you like to listen to some jazz? And I remember the gentleman said to me, he was like, well, if that's all you have, okay. You know, and then I tried to mention some classical pieces, and he was like, oh yeah, that would be what you would know. You know, and exactly right. There were all of these little things. I was like, oh, this is right. This is that exchange, you know. And eventually, and we actually didn't get anywhere. We sort of finished our exchange, but it was interesting, right? Because for that particular person, he couldn't get past what he saw. And one of the things that was very interesting was they had a very particular New England sort of upper crusty Boston accent, which if you go to Skidmore rings in your ear very well. And likewise, you can hear it in other people, right? Especially if you're in South Florida. And
totally.
And so he could hear it in my voice as well at the time. And he kept saying, I detect a tone in your voice, but I just can't quite make it out. And I was like, you detect the same tone that I detect, that New England stuffy kind of, you know, au gratin potatoes sound. Yeah. I know you.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I love all these lessons that you learned at the Circuit City.
Absolutely.
Who knew? Who knew? This sounds like, can I tell you honestly, right? You write and direct. I think you should develop that into something. Because that's really just the experience, you know, and it seems like when you first tell it, it sounds like it could be like some silly sitcom, but like you really do, just like doing like a radio show like this, you're literally interacting with people on a daily basis, and they're coming in with whatever baggage they're coming in with. You're having whatever kind of day you're having with, and oftentimes, you know, my experience is particularly with strangers, you end up having moments of intimacy that are
Mhm.
deeper than you have with your own family, because it's like
Absolutely.
in this particular moment, you're both comfortable enough to just let your guard down, and for 2 minutes you have this very intimate moment where you both are like, this is who I am and this is who that's so I think there's something there. Well,
All
listen,
right.
I could sit here and talk about Circuit City
Absolutely.
forever, and I don't but we're only a 50-minute show. So
Sure.
you said, I'm ready to go. So you said, Grandma, I'm going back to New York.
Yep. Absolutely. So I kind of got it together. I sat down and had a very powerful conversation with her, and I basically said, listen, you raised me to do everything right, and I've done everything right to this point. I just said, I just want my chance to mess up. You know, everybody else in our family
Yeah.
has had their chance, right? With all the tools that you've given me and all that I've shown you that I could do, I've earned the chance to go out there and maybe mess up. And like most sort of parents, she was like, "Well, I'm not helping you with anything. You better figure it out. Don't call me for nothing." She didn't mean it, but but she had to say that. And so I came back to New
Yeah.
York, back to the South Bronx with literally $500 in my pocket and no job, no family, no anything. One of my buddies from college moved with me in this one little apartment that I was sort of holding over, and just started again pounding pavement. Back then, you still printed your resume out and you went to companies and you did your little run, and you did your headshots, and you just kind of went out there and went out there and went out there, and I ended up working
For
for.
all those years, like at like the Kinkos with like the stick glue stick,
Uh-huh.
and then the like
Right? You get your backstage copy and you look at the list of victims and you try to get past security and, stuff that you cannot do now at all.
right?
That you could do back then, and I ended up, just to kind of hold me over, I worked at, when IKEA first came to New York, they had this showroom store on 57th Street. And so I was
Mhm.
in the stock department there, and I would like show up at like 5 o'clock in the morning. I would be like, the store wouldn't open till like 6 or so. So I would get there just to be early. I would get there like at 5, and I would just kind of hang out with the bums on 57th Street. Sometimes take a nap right in front of the store and hold the store and come in. And eventually that, the other thing that was different back then, obviously, is that you could still, in the Sunday Times, occasionally find an opportunity for a pretty decent job. And I
Mhm.
found one, like most kids that are into arts and visual stuff. My work study while I was in college was in an audiovisual department. So I'd already learned to shoot and learned to edit. And there was a job listed for an editor at a company called Video Monitoring Services, which was essentially a place where, like, how now everything is a repository on the internet, and you get
Yeah.
segments of stuff delivered to you, particularly if you would have, let's say if you were on the news talking about a grant, right? Then you would just order your little segment and it gets zipped to you. Well, if you go back to 1995, that all still had to be done on tape, and it all had to be cut
Mhm.
in analog. Video Monitoring Services used to be a subsidiary of, I don't know, you might remember this, of Burrell's. There
Oh
used to be,
yeah, of course. And they used to
right?
do like the newspaper clippings and the clipping
Right,
service.
exactly. So you remember
Yeah.
at the end of a talk show, it's like, if you'd like a tape or transcript.
Yes.
Right, exactly. So there were two sides to that business. There was what they call the consumer side, which was, you saw your favorite episode of Donahue or Oprah and you just want to get it back, and you send some money, and like 6 months later they send you the tape. But there was the commercial side, which was what advertising agencies, PR agencies, film agencies did, because they needed the edits turned around quickly so that they can then deal with promotional materials or media crisis going on. So I worked in the news production department. So we were essentially constantly monitoring news and cutting out everything that had to do with commercials into those segments, and then those were resold or reordered in times of usually media crises, to advertising firms and agencies and law firms. It was insane. So I worked my way up to the traffic department and then the production department. and I was the one of five guys that used to help to run the production department in New York, dealing with news and people in media crisis in every industry that you can think of, particularly in film and advertising, from like the mid 90s to 2001. If you can think of a media crisis at the time, the one that I tell the people the most about is, you remember the movie The Insider? When
I do.
Right, so when Philip Morris collapsed and all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
today I've not seen that movie because I was on the phone with those people during that whole collapse time. Having to get footage from around the country, having to get the actual interview that was the focus of the movie when Russell Crowe played that character. I probably read those transcripts like a good 30 times when they actually happened. And so that was my gig, and I was doing well. I was making good money, which was nice. You know, I was sort of doing the thing that I was supposed to do as a college grad, and I was kind of in my field. But again, once again, became immensely unhappy, right? Like I just kept looking around and going, so is this it? I'm just going to be the guy that gets the news about the thing that I want to do. And so in 2000, because I would have a lot of downtime, I was like, there's got to be a way for me to begin to pursue my dreams. So I applied to a USC film program, and I got in. So I was very excited. I took a personal leave so that I could do the program, and the leave was granted to me. But unfortunately, the loan that I needed to be able to do the program, I wasn't able to get. And so I was left in the situation where I was like, you know, this close to my dreams, but I'm not going to get an opportunity to live them out. But I worked in the news research place. So I was like, there's got to be a way to get involved. I learned about a program that if young filmmakers are listening to, they should be a part of. It's called the American Pavilion at the Cannes Film Festival. And so when I learned about the American Pavilion at the Cannes Film Festival, it was amazing because you didn't necessarily have to be a student. You had to get a couple of good recommendations. And if you did, you could be at the Cannes Film Festival from its opening through the entire run of the festival, working with film companies, working with television people, like just about everything. And all you had to do was pay your flight there. They would pay your hotel, you would get meals, you would get everything. And on top of that, if you were a student filmmaker, they would have a special film screening of the students that went, that were a part of the program. And those films were considered part of student film screened at the Cannes Film Festival at the time. So I signed up. I was very excited. I didn't have a film, but just the idea that what coincided was, and again, this is the higher power working in mysterious ways, right? The time that I had for my leave that I was approved for at work was the same time that the program ran. So even though I didn't get accepted to USC, somehow I had the time free, if I got accepted into this program, to be able to be there for the entire Cannes Film Festival in 2001. So I went to,
wow.
Yeah, exactly. So I went to one of the VPs of the company, and I told her, this is my dream, this is what I want to do. And she said, well, you know, she looked at me, she goes, well, I already approved your leave. If you can get accepted, go. I was like, are you kidding me? She was like, no. She goes, I'll even write you a recommendation. And she wrote me a recommendation. I got accepted to the program. And I was all set. May of 2001 to go to the Cannes Film Festival. I found out, I believe, like September of 2000. So January of 2001, the American Pavilion sent a letter to all of us that were going in May. And they said, our server crashed and our entire listserv of those of you that were coming with a film, we lost. So if you have a film, please write back to us. Tell us that you have a film so that we can make sure that we put it on the roster and you can screen it in May. And I sat there in front of my computer. I did not have a film. And I said, do you think you can make a movie in 5 months? And I was like, yes, I can. And so I went, yes, I have a film and I will have it. And then I hit send. And then I had 5 months to figure out, how am I going to make a movie?
Oh my God.
And so,
oh my God.
Yep. And so fortunately at the time, a very dear friend of mine that has passed away now, his name was John Wilson. He used to go by J.R. Strong. He was a DJ and local producer. And I had helped him out at work when he had gotten in trouble. And he told me one time, if you ever need anything, I got you. So I was like, for real? So I told him what happened, and he had already quit and he was back to working for himself. And at the time, the Canon GL1s and the Canon GL, I think 1200s were the first consumer digital cameras to come out. So making film for the first time, you could get your little digital cassette that ran 1 hour, and you could do as many takes as you could. If you bought, so like for $120, you could buy 10 cassettes. That was 10 hours of footage. Where if you were still shooting film for $750, you could get a can of short ends. That was only 15 minutes, and then you had to pay to process it. So the paradigm in how an independent filmmaker could work changed literally overnight. The next thing that happened was I needed editing. So he had somebody that could edit. So I created a strategy where I would shoot during the week after I used to work in the evening. So I would shoot early during the day. Then I would get it edited on weekends and created a schedule so that hopefully by the time I got to Cannes, the whole thing would be finished. Initially, it was supposed to be an action film. And then I realized you don't have any money for action. So I pivoted quickly and created a romantic comedy, right? But then I realized that I didn't have enough time to develop a full-fledged 2-hour film. So I was like, well, let's just have it end at the first date, right? And, I have friends and we were all in our mid-20s, so everybody always commiserated about, the relationship and finding somebody in New York. I made it my goal to try to create a story where there were 4 couples and the 2 people that were chasing each other kind of all had the same friends, but they had never seen each other face to face. So they were constantly getting advice on how to meet one another. And at the time, something that was very important to me was to shoot all of their interactions in all the neighborhoods in New York that I live in, right? So I shot some in Brooklyn, I shot some in Harlem, I shot some in the Bronx, in the neighborhoods where people didn't think romantic comedies happened because, only like coming of age or getting shot by the gang person happened. It's like, no, we have families, we fall in love, we're regular human beings. So I did that. My greatest luck at the time was that my friend at the time, Judy Reyes, who was in the TV show Scrubs.
I know Judy Reyes.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Judy actually played the lead in my first film.
That's exciting.
Yeah. So I told her what I was doing and everything like that, and she agreed, and she was very kind. She helped me to become a better screenplay writer. And so we went at it, and I literally, my friend Samira Qureshi, who now, last I checked, was working at AMC, she produced the film, and we shot it. Then I flew out to Cannes, and while I was there for the first 2 weeks, the film was in editing. And then the last week when we were literally going to show, Samira flew the finished film from New York to the Cannes Film Festival, and I got to screen my very first film ever. I screened at the Cannes Film Festival in 2001, alongside Faye Dunaway.
Alongside who? I'm sorry.
Faye Dunaway.
Oh my God, that's so amazing! Oh my God, can I tell you? I know we sat, and you are one of the most fascinating people I've ever met in my entire life. And I'm a little upset because we're actually at the end of our 55 minutes and I want to continue hearing your story. Answer me this. You're on Instagram?
Yes.
Listen, how would you like to do an Instagram live later this week? Because I want to pick up right here. Because this is the perfect cliffhanger. You just did your first film. It got screened at Cannes next to Faye Dunaway. Would you be down with that?
Oh yeah, totally. Absolutely.
Okay. Oh my goodness. And I cannot wait to continue this conversation on Instagram Live on Friday. All of you have to come on over to @Showtime with Jordan on Instagram, and we are going to get the entire second half of his story, and we are not going to stop until we get it all, because I think that Jose is one of the most fascinating people I've ever met. Thank you all in Radioland for joining us this week. Don't forget to download the Hot 702.5 FM app if you haven't already. And we will see you on Friday with Jose Esquea. And we'll also see you next week right here on Hot 702.5 FM with another fabulous friend. Have a fabulous, fabulous week.